Hello everyone, and welcome back to Scary Interesting. In this video, we're going to go over two incredibly creepy disappearances. The second one in particular is kind of unique. It just keeps escalating, and then when it finally happens and you realize what's really going on, it is horrifying. As always, viewer discretion is strongly advised. A 14-year-old Noah's mother described her son as the light of her life. Somewhat ironically, the boy who radiated so much positive light was apparently deathly afraid of the dark, and in a tragic twist of fate, he would end up in one of the darkest, most confined, and most inaccessible places in the city where he lived. Noah was born in Northern Ireland on Friday, November 25, 2005. Noah and his mother eventually moved to South Belfast, and as a teenager, friends and family members described him as bright and well-liked with eclectic interests. In addition to being an athlete and a musician, Noah enjoyed studying foreign languages and reading about philosophy. He and his mother had a strong bond and spent a fair amount of time together, and generally speaking, Noah was just a normal kid with a bright future. Here's where things start to get strange though. Unbeknownst to his sleeping mother, Noah left his home in South Belfast shortly after 3:30 a.m. on the morning of Sunday, June 21, 2020. We know he was carrying headphones and that he was wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops because at least one CCTV camera captured him walking towards Queen's University that morning. About 38 minutes later, these same cameras caught him walking back toward his home. By then though, his headphones and his flip-flops were gone. It's unclear why he left his house so early, where he went, who if anyone he met, or why he ditched his headphones and flip-flops along the way. We also don't know what Noah did the rest of the day, but we do know that he left his home 14 hours later at approximately 5:40 p.m. after telling his mother he was riding his bike to Cave Hill Country Park to meet a few classmates. He was apparently going there to work on a school project with them. This park was nearly 6 miles north of his house. That evening, he was wearing shorts, a hoodie, a jacket, athletic shoes, a helmet, and carrying a backpack with his laptop inside. Once again, he was captured by CCTV cameras as he pedaled through downtown Belfast. Shortly into the trip, he was seen by another CCTV camera and at least one eyewitness falling off his bike. It's not clear what caused the fall or if Noah sustained any serious injuries, but moments later, he got back on the bike and continued riding. By then, he was in North Belfast. Noah was then seen on another street a little ways away at 6 p.m., and by then the backpack he had been wearing was gone. Then another little while later, he was seen cycling through a residential area without any clothes on. At this point, he was also miles away from where he told his mother he was meeting his classmates. Shortly thereafter, at 6:03 p.m., Noah got off his bike and walked past a house on a street toward a stream and storm drain, both of which were on land owned by the Department for Infrastructure. This was the last confirmed sighting of Noah. All told, less than 20 minutes passed between the time he left home and when he was last seen. Noah's mother reported him missing shortly before 10 p.m. that night. She was worried about him because he should have been home hours before and because she claimed he'd been dealing with mental health issues. Unfortunately, it's not really clear what the mental health issues were or how they were affecting him. But whatever the case, the authorities launched a comprehensive search, and before long they found Noah's bike as well as the clothes and helmet he discarded along his route. This was obviously more than a little alarming. As far as his mother knew, he didn't have a change of clothes with him that night. And the fact that he ditched all of his possessions seemed to indicate that he wasn't thinking clearly or that he was in some kind of distress. Needless to say, the following days were absolutely agonizing for Noah's family and friends. Even so, they held out hope that he was still alive and with a little luck, he'd eventually resurface. Meanwhile, the police went door to door and distributed thousands of leaflets asking anyone with knowledge to come forward. Their efforts generated some new leads as well as a number of alleged sightings, but in the end, none of the new information panned out. By then, even Noah's most optimistic supporters were pretty sure that something horrible had happened. Sadly, their suspicions were confirmed on Saturday, June 27, 2020, nearly a full week after he went missing. That afternoon, searchers discovered his naked body nearly 3,300 feet or 1,000 meters inside an underground storm drain near where his bike was found. Shortly thereafter, his mother got the gut-wrenching call she'd been dreading all along. When she went to identify the body, she immediately noticed a 6-inch long bump on Noah's forehead that wasn't there the last time she saw him. According to the medical examiner as well, strangely, Noah's death was caused by drowning. As such, detectives concluded that he injured his head and became disoriented when he fell off his bike. After that, he entered the storm drain and somehow drowned. On the surface, the confusion and disorientation possibly explained why Noah would have shed his clothes and discarded his personal items, including his backpack and laptop. But interestingly, the backpack and laptop weren't initially found along his route of travel or with his body. For a variety of reasons, for Noah's heartbroken family, the official version of events just didn't add up. In fact, it was just so strange that it raised more questions than it answered. First, nobody knew why he ended up in a part of the city he wasn't familiar with. And as one of his aunts pointed out, the storm drain he entered was at the end of a cul-de-sac. Some people who lived nearby for decades didn't even know it was there. In addition, that portion of the stream was gated and closed to the public. How did Noah know where the storm drain was in the first place? Maybe more importantly though, why on earth would a 14-year-old with a fear of the darkness willingly enter a dark storm drain, even if he was disoriented and confused? And finally, even beyond him entering the storm drain, that doesn't explain how he would go on to drown somewhere inside. In the aftermath of the investigation as well, Noah's family wasn't happy with the way authorities handled the whole ordeal. They didn't think they put enough effort into getting to the bottom of his tragic and baffling death. And they weren't the only ones dissatisfied with the official investigation. Public concern eventually led to rallies, marches, and vigils across the city. Later, his mother even founded an organization called Noah's Army. This was created with the hope that authorities would release the information they had and reopen the investigation. One of her main issues was that much of the information in Noah's case file was granted what's called public interest immunity. This meant that the authorities weren't obligated to release it on the grounds that it wasn't in the public's best interest and that it might actually do more harm than good. Needless to say, this only deepened the mystery as well as the public outrage surrounding the already controversial case. Another key point of contention was that Noah's movements that evening were only captured by a few dozen cameras, even though his mother claimed there were 180 CCTV cameras along his route. As the public outcry grew louder and louder, the coroner and the authorities appealed for additional information regarding Noah's movements that morning. Unfortunately, this had almost no impact on the case and did little to placate Noah's family and supporters. Meanwhile, the authorities scheduled and rescheduled the inquest multiple times until a final date was finally set for early November of 2025, more than 5 years after his death. This was then extended to early 2026. In between now and then, a man was arrested and jailed in early 2021 for stealing Noah's backpack and laptop the previous summer. In the early going, it seemed like a big breakthrough that might finally help solve the case once and for all. The man was apprehended after attempting to pawn the laptop. Courts, however, concluded that the theft was just a crime of opportunity and that the man had nothing to do with Noah's death. Noah's family also eventually reached out to award-winning investigative reporter Donald McIntyre to see if he could help crack the case. He agreed, but his investigation didn't get underway until years later, after he put together a team of experienced profilers, criminologists, and forensic specialists and raised enough via crowdfunding. As far as we know, the results of his investigation won't be made public until early 2026. Despite all of these setbacks though, the inquest was finally held on the 19th of January of this year, 2026, and there was at least one new piece of strange evidence that came out of it. Apparently, 2 separate nearby residents heard screams at midnight or in the early morning hours the night he disappeared. At least one of those residents then got her husband up and went to check their garden. One of these residents also described it as a muffled scream that sounded far away. Unfortunately, it seems that's all the new information that's been learned. As far as I can tell, the investigation, at least unofficially, is still ongoing. In 2012, Dave Krupa was trying to figure out what modern dating looked like after a long relationship had come to an end. He had recently moved to the Omaha, Nebraska area and was raising 2 children, so he had plenty going on, but he was easing back into the idea of meeting new people. He created profiles on a few online dating sites, and eventually he started meeting women, but he remained upfront about where he was in life and what he was looking for. He didn't pretend to want anything serious, and he told this to the women he'd meet. Some would be aligned with that approach, and others who were looking for more would move on, and that was just fine by Dave. And funny enough, it was through his work as a manager at an auto repair shop, not online dating, that Cari would come into his life. She brought in her Ford Explorer for service one day, and Dave found himself immediately taken by her. She was confident, attractive, and easy to talk to, and it seemed like she felt similarly toward him. There was just a natural spark between them, so Dave took a chance and asked her out on a date, to which Cari agreed. Their first date went well enough that Dave invited Cari back to his apartment. Once there, Cari made it clear to Dave that she wasn't looking for a committed relationship either. She told him that she just wanted to keep things casual and have fun. This was obviously music to Dave's ears. There were no expectations or pressure, and they agreed to keep things simple as they continued to see each other over the next couple of weeks. By 2012, Cari was 37 years old and working as a computer programmer in Omaha. At the time as well, she lived in the small town of Macedonia, Iowa, about an hour's drive from Omaha, where she was raising her teenage son. By all accounts, Cari had built a stable life for herself around work and being a single parent, but things were always so good. In her late 20s, she was diagnosed with depression and later bipolar disorder. She sought treatment and worked with therapists who prescribed her medication to help. Like many people managing long-term mental health conditions, there were periods where she stopped taking her medication because she said it made her feel emotionally flat. Despite this though, by the time she met Dave, everyone in Cari's life would unanimously say that she was doing well for herself. Those same people would describe Cari as warm and engaging with a distinctive laugh and a big smile. People tended to notice when she walked into a room and her history of mental health issues felt like a distant memory to those she was close to. This is what made the events that followed so unsettling. Cari spent the previous night at Dave's place, and on the morning of November 13th, he got up for work and kissed her goodbye before saying he would see her later. A few hours into his workday, Dave's phone buzzed. It was a text from Cari, and it caught him completely off guard. In it, she floated the idea of moving in together. Dave's heart sank upon reading this. He thought they were in complete agreement about what their relationship was and wasn't, never mind the fact that they had only known each other for 2 weeks at that point. After processing the strange message, he tried to respond calmly but firmly. He told Cari that living together wasn't something he wanted and reminded her that they had already talked about keeping things casual. The reply from Cari came back almost immediately, and it was nothing like he expected. The tone flipped in an instant, and Cari's reply was angry and profane. She told Dave that she hated him and that she was already seeing someone else and that she didn't want to see him ever again. The sudden shift left Dave stunned, as just hours earlier, everything between them had seemed fine. At first, he assumed that she simply left and meant what she said, that whatever they had was over, but the messages kept coming. Over the next several days, Dave's phone lit up constantly with texts and emails from Cari accusing him of ruining her life. The messages ranged from long and rambling to short and vicious. It was as if Dave's refusal to entertain the idea of living with Cari had changed something within her, and the fallout wasn't just limited to Dave's phone. Around the same time, Cari's mother, Nancy, started receiving messages from her daughter as well. Cari told Nancy that she had taken a new job in Kansas, and the texts from there quickly turned hostile, even accusing Nancy of being controlling and stating that she had never been a good mother. Nancy also couldn't help but notice that the messages were sloppy and full of spelling errors, missing punctuation and grammatical mistakes. She had always known Cari to be meticulous in how she wrote, but these messages were a jumbled mess. Nancy then tried calling her repeatedly, but the calls went unanswered, leaving Nancy with the assumption that her daughter had snapped. Desperately, Nancy wanted to get Cari whatever help she needed, but as days passed, no one knew where she was. Cari didn't show up for her half-brother's wedding on November 16th, then she missed her son's 15th birthday, then Thanksgiving and her father's funeral. With every missed occasion, Nancy's word grew and she reported Cari missing, being sure to tell the authorities about her daughter's bipolar diagnosis and medication history. Unfortunately, the response Nancy received from the police was discouraging. Because Cari was still texting and emailing people, and because she was an adult with a known mental health condition, the situation didn't raise immediate alarms. From the outside, it looked like Cari had chosen to leave, and she was making sure everyone knew how she felt about it. And despite Cari's physical disappearance, the messages continued. Dave's phone rarely stayed quiet for too long. Texts and emails arrived at all hours, sometimes dozens in a single day. The messages swung between extremes, as Cari would tell him how much she despised him and wanted him to suffer before telling him that they belonged together. Dave, meanwhile, did his best to shut it down. He blocked numbers and changed his own phone number more than once, but none of it worked. The messages always found their way to his phone somehow. As this was all going on, Dave reconnected with Liz, a woman he had met through online dating before he met Cari. Their relationship had been casual, and when Dave told Liz he was seeing other people, she didn't push back. As the harassment of Dave and Nancy escalated though, Liz found herself caught in Cari's crosshairs too. Liz said that she received hostile texts and emails from Cari that were both angry and threatening. There were even nights when they were sitting together on Dave's couch watching TV when both of their phones would start buzzing at the same time. One message rattled Dave more than the rest though. He was alone in his apartment one night, sitting in his recliner with his feet propped up, trying to unwind. A text suddenly came in though that described exactly what he was doing, even down to the blue shirt he was wearing. It became clear to him in that moment that things had progressed far beyond harassing messages. Cari was now clearly watching him. Around this same time, Liz came home one day to find that her house was vandalized. Inside her garage, someone had spray painted a profane message on her wall. She then reported it to police in late November and told them she thought it was Cari who was responsible for it. As the weeks turned into months, the messages didn't slow down. If anything, they intensified. Dave noticed that much of Cari's anger was now aimed at Liz, warning her to stay away from him and that there would be consequences if she didn't. The threats also grew more explicit. In one message to Dave, Cari said she hated him so much that she wanted to drive a knife into his heart. In another, she promised to make him suffer. And the swings between rage and attachment were exhausting, and that's when a message came in that truly crossed the line. Cari sent Dave an email that included a photograph of a woman bound inside a vehicle. The image was obviously graphic and upsetting, and there was no explanation attached to it. Then, in another email he received, Cari had sent a website link that led to a fake online obituary for Liz. Even despite all of this, though, the worst was still yet to come. In August of 2013, almost a full year since Dave and Cari met, Liz's house caught fire and all her pets were sadly killed. Horrifyingly, fire investigators believed that the blaze had been deliberately set, and Liz was convinced that Cari was responsible. Dave's workplace wasn't spared either, as the auto shop where he worked was vandalized. Then in January of 2014, the harassment took another step forward. Dave was in his apartment with a woman when his phone began filling with messages again. When the messages stopped coming in, they heard someone trying to open the front door. Then moments later, a brick crashed through the window. Dave would soon learn that the mother of his children, Amy, had started receiving messages from Cari too. Increasingly fearful for his safety at this point, Dave bought a gun and kept it in his apartment, hoping it would give him some peace of mind. Later though, he suddenly realized it was missing and he reported it to police. Unfortunately, despite his suspicions, there was no clear explanation for where it had gone. Even with all of this going on, it wouldn't be until 2015 when the case was assigned to detectives Ryan and Jim for investigation. Neither of them had worked on Cari's disappearance before, but they were familiar with the story, so the two detectives took a unique approach to the case. By this point, it had been 2.5 years since anyone involved had seen Cari physically, so Ryan approached the case under the assumption that Cari was behind the harassment, while Jim investigated from the viewpoint that it was someone pretending to be Cari. One of the first things Ryan did was look into Cari's finances, and he quickly noticed something didn't sit right. Since 2012, 3 years earlier, there had been no activity on Cari's bank accounts. If she had truly left for Kansas to start over, it didn't make sense that she hadn't spent a single dollar in years. Next, because nearly everything had taken place electronically, the detectives brought in a digital forensics expert. Dave and Liz then both agreed to have their phones and accounts examined, and the scope of what they uncovered was staggering. Over a 3-year period, Dave alone had received roughly 15,000 emails and more than 50,000 text messages from Cari. She had adjusted tactics over time too, using different platforms and masking locations to avoid being traced. Even these precautions couldn't hide the truth of what was really going on once police had access to Liz's phone though. On it, investigators found a photo of Cari's Ford Explorer, an image that had been taken roughly a month before police officially located the vehicle in January of 2013 in Omaha. During a search of the Explorer back then, police found a single fingerprint on a mint container that didn't belong to Cari or anyone in the National Fingerprint Database. When that fingerprint was compared to Liz's prints years later, it was a match. Detectives also uncovered multiple phone calls placed from Liz's phone to Cari's home, all made using the *67 prefix to hide the caller's number. The threatening photo of the bound woman sent to Dave was also traced back to Liz's phone, and a video showing someone walking outside Dave's apartment that was uploaded to YouTube under Cari's name was linked to an IP address registered to Liz's home. There was also a furniture sale that provided a damning revelation. Nancy told investigators that shortly after her daughter disappeared, Cari had texted her saying that she sold her furniture and asked Nancy to let the buyer into the house to collect the pieces. Cari sent a photo of the check as proof of the sale, and on that check was the name Shauna Gollier, Liz's legal name. One by one, the pieces lined up, forming a picture that clearly showed that Cari was not the one behind all the harassment. It was Liz the entire time. She had sent all the messages, vandalized her own home, and even set the fire in her own house that killed all of her pets. Sensing the walls closing in around her, Liz resorted to desperate measures in her last moments of freedom. In December of 2015, Liz walked into the sheriff's office saying that she wanted to file a harassment claim against Amy, the mother of Dave's children. Liz claimed that Amy, not Cari, was behind the messages all along and even suggested that Amy might be in possession of Dave's missing gun. The very next day, Liz called 911 and reported that she'd been shot in the leg and she believed Amy was the shooter. Thankfully, it didn't take long for investigators to determine the truth. Liz had done it to herself with the gun she stole from Dave's apartment, just to divert attention in another direction. In response, police looked at Liz's phone again, and their second look at her activity revealed even more. Detectives found that Liz had created dozens of fake email accounts, many of them using variations of Cari's name. They also learned that Liz had been using an app that allowed texts and emails to be scheduled and sent later, which explained how Dave and Liz could receive harassing messages at the same time. It also explained how the activity never really stopped and showed that Liz had been working constantly to keep the ruse up. Detectives estimated that Liz had spent as many as 40 to 50 hours a week maintaining the illusion. With all of this new information, Ryan and Jim started to turn the screws to get Liz to confess, but things only got stranger. Suddenly, the police started receiving emails from someone claiming to be Amy, confessing to killing Cari in her vehicle back in 2012. These two, as you might have suspected, originated from Liz. This prompted the police to search the vehicle again. This time, they removed the upholstery from the passenger seat, and underneath it, they found bloodstains belonging to Cari. Liz was arrested and formally charged with first-degree murder in 2016. Despite the lack of a body, Liz was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. To this day, she continues to maintain her innocence, and Cari's body has still never been recovered. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching, and a special thanks to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon or as a channel member. If you're interested, we offer early access videos that are released roughly a week before the regular YouTube uploads. Also, if you have a story suggestion, feel free to submit it using the form found in the description. Anyways, thanks again, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.